Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
So they was like, okay. And they was like, well, where did she go? I said, she pulled out, she made it right. I said, they said they came from, it's a little area in North Charleston. So I told them that area. I said, if she's going anywhere, she's going back there. So they were like, okay. And they was like, where's your truck? I said, behind the store. And then my partner ran back there and he was like, there's another guy in the car. And I said, oh, I forgot about him. I said, yeah, he's cool. I said, yeah, he's cool. I said, he's been back there for a minute. So y'all might want to like let him out. So they ended up talking to him. They rushed me to the hospital. And when I get to the hospital, like I'm just completely just nude. And they're like rolling me and flipping me over and they're counting out loud. And they're like, I found this one, I found that one. And I'm like looking at them like, could y'all not just tell me out loud how many times I've been shot right now? Because I don't know what's going to happen. I've never been shot before. This is my first time really being in this predicament in life, really like a life threatening situation. So I remember like my sheriff got there, my chief got there. They actually called my mom before I went into surgery because obviously she was like 3 hours away. So they called her. Their initial thought was to get SLED and them to put a helicopter up, but the weather was too bad. So they actually called a deputy from Spartanburg. He went and woke my mom up. That's how she answered the phone. He put her in the car, drove her to Columbia, and then a trooper met her in Columbia and brought her to Charleston. So by the time I got out of surgery, I think she said I was in surgery maybe like 8 or 9 hours. Um, she was there. So they ended up finding him before I even went into surgery. They were like, "Oh, we found him already." So I was like, "Okay." And I remember telling my sergeant, I was like, it's a girl, it's a girl, it's a girl. Like, this is what she looked like. And he was like, well, the ID says a male. So I was like, I'm confused. Like, what are you talking about? So they was like, was it a female or was it a male? And I said, it was definitely a female that shot me. He goes, okay. So they go to the house. Come to find out, it was actually a transgender. So she was actually born male but living as female. So that's why they were like all confused. So they get to the house. They surround the house. Whatever. They send all of the roommates ended up coming out of the house except for her. So they start negotiations, and he's like, "Well, she shot me. I need EMS." North Charleston SLED and them are all there, and they're like, "Fuck you! You're not getting any of that. Like, you just shot one of our deputies. She's in surgery. You can just bleed to death, pretty much." So right when they got sick of doing negotiations, they North Charleston SWAT team actually knocked the door, and as soon as they knocked the door, she ended up killing herself. So when they walked in, they saw where she was like trying to do like a makeshift tourniquet, where she was like trying to like I don't know what she was doing. I really don't care at this point. But she ended up dying that morning, and then the next morning, so the morning of the 27th is when everybody was like, "Oh, it's your 1 year anniversary. Like, congratulations." I was like, "Yeah, I guess so." But yeah, that's pretty much what happened. I ended up. The news said I was shot 9 times, and they got 9 because that's how many rounds that she actually shot at me. So I was actually hit in my foot, my knee, ear, lip, and then radio was hit. That's why I lost communication. So the last communication they had with me was when I said that, "Hey, I'm in a fight." And then they lost all contact because I was trying to figure out like where everybody was. Come to find out, I wasn't transmitting when I said shots fired because my radio was hit. And then the one that went under my vest and got lodged in my stomach. So they ended up, that was the surgery that took the longest, right? Because they didn't want me to come out with a colostomy bag and all that good stuff. So, but yeah.
Well, that sounds like a fun night. Jeez. Kimber, what the
Oh,
heck?
yeah.
That's crazy. Well, I didn't even catch that it was actually, a biological male
Yes, biological male.
that oh,
Hmm.
okay, well, I mean that actually explains some things because, the aggression and um, you know,
The strength.
yeah, the
Yeah,
strength,
the
the
strength. Yep.
um off kilter a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's anyway, that wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
then
Well, honestly, that it
and then
just
the funny part in that, well, I guess not really funny, but when they were talking to the young man that I had in the back seat, he had no clue that she was actually male. So I won't get too graphic, but there was like some messages, and they were actually attempting to have intercourse, but it wasn't going as planned because he didn't realize that it was a male. So
hmm,
he completely spazzed out. After that, haven't seen him since. Haven't Don't know where he is.
I'm sure that would have, once he fully realized, that would have been a real moment. So,
Yeah.
well, thank God you were protected enough.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, wow. So I want to go back to the way you were first describing it.
Mm.
And, I served at 14 years in the Army and, went through lots of trainings, but I never actually went to a war zone. So I never actually got shot at.
Mm.
So it's hard, even having a military background, it's kind of hard for me to relate with what you're talking about here. Now, I have had lots of friends that have, been in firefights, and they describe that the way you did, the way
Mm.
time kind of slows down. Things slow down, and so it's almost like things are moving in slow motion,
Yep.
um, which is amazing. And I think it's actually kind of a defense mechanism for when adrenaline kicks in like that. But the first shot that went off is what that hit your ear, right?
Yeah, so it hit my ear. We're trying to figure out, we never really could figure out if this was the same one that went through my lip that took the bottom portion of my lip off. I've had since plastic surgery, obviously.
Mm,
So I know for a fact when that first one hit, it did hit this ear. Now, I don't know if the second one was the lip, but yeah, that first one was the one that knocked my senses completely haywire.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and you said you saw a flash, but you were thinking, what just happened?
Yeah.
So I mean, all that stuff that you described. So from the first shot to the ninth shot, how much time do you think that actually was, or do you have any
Well,
idea?
they actually told me. I can't remember now because it's been so long, but they literally said from the time that I said 10:10 to the part where they actually showed up was less than 5 minutes. I think the actual shooting itself was maybe like a minute and a half, maybe
Wow.
a minute and a half. It was not long at all. It just felt like it was 15-20 minutes because when I asked them, I said, "Y'all, how long was I back there?" And they were like, "No, you radioed in that you were getting out with the car like at like 12:08." And then they said like at like 12:10, maybe 12:11 is when I said 10:10. And then I think they said 12, maybe 12:14, 15 is when the call somewhere came in there. So it wasn't long. It was really quick.
Well,
Yeah.
well, a lot of stuff can happen in that much time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, when you were firing back, did you actually hit her, him? Did you actually, when you were returning fire, did you hit him?
Yeah, that was the leg shot that she was trying to do the tourniquet on. Apparently that makes sense on how she fell behind the car. Um so when they said that they obviously did the autopsy, she had the one where they were like, well, she didn't come out. She was probably gonna die anyway because she was losing blood. I mean, there was a blood trail where you saw that she was trying to wrap her leg up. She pretty much got in the bed and was just like, okay, whatever. So yeah, so she had the one that she did to herself, and then she had the leg wound.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, I'm sure recovery was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
All
Ooh.
those. How many surgeries did you say you've been through?
So I had the initial one when I went in. They had to wait a few days for my leg because they didn't want to do too much with the one thing they said was swelling. I didn't realize that, but especially like with your feet, especially with bone. If it's too swollen, there's pretty much nothing they can do because they can't even get to it. So I had that one. I had, I think, 4 plastic surgeries, and that's from the ear, the lip. They had to move some stuff from my hip to the front because I have that big scar now from where they did the actual cut. It still never healed correctly. I just keloid, so it is what it is now. It's just a nice scar. So altogether, I've had at least 7 surgeries, at least
Man.
somewhere in there. Yeah. And the main
Well,
one was just the stomach. So,
yeah, you're, well, I mean, when I met you, a month ago, um, would have never been able to tell that you had been shot that many times. So
yeah.
when you were up there talking and you're describing it, I had no idea on your story at that point. And I was just like, what? How in the world did this woman get shot that many times? And yet you were walking fine. You were looking great.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
wow. Well, modern medicine, that's another awesome
Absolutely.
thing about things that they can do that, you know, I mean, the one good thing about war, I guess, is they can heal, gunshots and stuff pretty fast now. So
Yeah,
that's,
they can heal gunshots pretty quickly. They can heal bones pretty quickly. I was out for a year, but the mental aspect, that's what takes the longest. I don't think people realize is they look at you and
yeah.
say, "Oh, well, you're fine," but then they don't realize you still got to go to sleep at night. You still got to think about that.
Oh
So,
yeah. Well, that's a thing about, I've had enough guests on the show that are like specialists in,
mhm.
forensics and psychology and things like that, that they I mean, just think, I'm sure that you will never actually get that memory of that flash going off. And you think just a
Mm-mm.
few centimeters to, the left,
We're not having this conversation.
yeah, you wouldn't even be here anymore. So, not only, yeah, you are destined to do some fantastic things in life because clearly the Lord was protecting you that night. So,
Absolutely, still grateful for them. Still,
yeah. Well, so you're doing, now that's been 8 years since that happened.
yes,
Wow. Okay. So it
yes,
took you a full year to recover from the physical wounds.
yes.
And then what have you been doing to take care of yourself mentally and everything since then?
Yeah, so initially, I thank my sheriff for obviously recognizing that you just got to go talk to somebody after that. Like nobody is supposed to be shot or nobody is supposed to have their life to the point where they're about to die. Pretty much, somebody tried to murder me. Is pretty much what I had to wrap my mind around, and I had to accept that. Like somebody and it wasn't one of those situations where I tried to talk myself out of like, oh, she just wanted to do like the one shot to scare me and run off. Like, nah, that bitch stood over me. Like she wanted to just end everything. So nobody should ever have to go through that in general. So I recognize and accept the fact that they forced me for a reason because I was not going. But luckily they did. So I went to therapy probably 3 times a week right after that happened. I didn't have anything else to do. My leg was wrapped up, stomach couldn't lift, couldn't do anything, could barely sit up, couldn't shower by myself. So there was nothing else to do but sit around and think about it. And we all know that idle mind's the worst place to be. So went to therapy about 3 times a week initially, and then I went once a week, and then I started talking about it. Right, like I had to start getting it out. I had to start telling my story because I had to realize I wasn't the only one that had went through something like that, and still it hasn't stopped, especially with law enforcement. So I think knowing that I could talk to somebody else and know that I was helping somebody else go through the exact same thing that I went through became therapeutic as well. But yeah, I still go to therapy. I still more so for maintenance now. I think a lot of people have to get away from that stigma of you're not supposed to be in therapy, you're not supposed to talk about it. Like that's not the correct answer. That does more harm than good. So that's how I maintain now. But talking about it every chance that I get, accepting the awards because like I said, when Tom called me, I was like, why am I getting an award 8 years later? And he was like, you don't realize how like legit your story is. Like most people would never do that. Most men would never do that. Most women could not do that. So I just accept and embrace that, and I just continue to tell the story, really.
Yeah. Well, my hat's off to you. That's for sure. That's absolutely amazing. But thanks for joining us.
Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.